The old school manual type of camera must be advanced manually with a lever and rewound after the film is exposed by way of a crank. Therefore, loading is a bit more complicated than the automatic types. The first thing you do is open the back by lifting up on the rewind lever. Before I go any further, not all cameras will be exactly the same, so keep that in mind. Once the back is open, place the film in like so. Here's a tip to make sure that the film advances properly. Pull on the leader and take out the slack until the rewind crank rotates like so. This will assure you that the film is advancing because you'll see the crank turn when you advance the film. Next, pull the leader all the way over to the take-up spindle and slip it into the slot. Advance the advance lever a couple of times while making sure that the rewind crank is rotating with each crank. Then close the back and advance the film until you get to number 1 in the film counter. Keep in mind that with this type of camera, each time you advance the film, you're also cocking the shutter and then tripping the shutter each time you press the shutter release button. After you've shot the last frame of film, you'll feel the advance lever give some resistance and you'll see that your frame counter is on either 24 or 36, depending on how many exposures you bought. Never ever force the advance lever when you reach the end or you'll break the film and maybe even your camera. Instead, turn the camera over and locate the rewind release button on the bottom and press it, which will free up the film so that it can be rewound by way of the rewind crank. Lift up the lever on the rewind crank and locate the arrow, which indicates which direction to crank the lever. Now go ahead and rewind the film all the way back into the film cassette in the direction of the arrow. You'll know when the film is totally rewound when it all of a sudden takes less force to crank the crank. Now it's safe to open up the back of the camera and remove the film cassette. Loading a roll of film into an automatic SLR is much less complicated. These cameras have a built-in motor that not only automatically advances the film and cocks the shutter for you, it also automatically rewinds the film for you when you're done shooting. You gotta like that. My suggestion for my students wanting to purchase a camera is to get the automatic type. Most of you will feel at home with these cameras because they work much like a DSLR, right down to having a mode dial to set your exposure modes. In fact, the Canon Rebel EOS series of automatic 35mm SLRs, like the one you see here, are basically the prototypes for nearly all the DSLRs you see today. They also have autofocus and usually include a zoom lens as standard equipment. To load the film, turn the camera on and open up the back. Place the film into the compartment as seen here, and then pull the leader all the way over to the mark on the right side. Close the back, and you should immediately hear the motor advancing the film for you. Depending on the type of camera you have, the film will either advance all the way to the end of the film as seen here, or advance only to the first frame. In the event that it advances to the end of the roll, you will essentially be shooting from the end of the film to the beginning. Either way, the camera will automatically rewind after you've shot all of your either 24 or 36 shots. In the event you want to rewind manually, because you don't need the remaining film, there's usually an option to do so depending on your model of camera. This camera requires a two-step process: rotating the mode dial to the rewind icon and then pressing down on another button with a sharp object. Once the film is rewound all the way into the cassette, it is then safe to remove it from the camera.